Hello and welcome to Ticket Manager's All Access interview series, engaging leaders from across the sports marketing spectrum to identify and explore critical issues in the business of sports, entertainment, sponsorship, activation, ticketing, hospitality, and yes, even more than that. I'm your host, Jim Andrews, and joining me on this episode is Suzanne Kunkel, Global and U.S. Chief Marketing Officer for Deloitte. Suzanne, it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Terrific. Well, we love it when we have CMOs and folks who have just a wider perspective on the business and marketing in general. So I think we're going to explore some interesting topics here today. And I'd like to start off with, of course, all of the listeners to this podcast will be familiar with Deloitte, but as with any kind of global diversified business like yours, there are probably some important things that they don't know. So what would you like people, particularly in the sports and entertainment sector, to know about Deloitte that maybe we're not aware of?
Deloitte has a very complex product set, as you mentioned. So the thing I would like people to know is really sort of three things about what our brand promises to partners and to clients and to our people. The first is that we are always trying to make an impact that matters. That's very important to us. We say an impact that matters to our people, our communities, our clients, and increasingly the planet. That means we really meter what we do through that lens, and that's very, very important to us. The second thing is we are all about progress. We're about changing where the world is headed, not just fixing existing problems. And in that notion, we're really about bringing the latest technologies, deep industry expertise, the broadest set of, capabilities, really sort of setting the world in motion. And then last but not least, particularly in times of uncertainty, we believe that it's very important to have a partner by your side that you trust implicitly and that you believe has your interest at stake and the integrity to help you make judgment calls that are required today. And so that is what, that is how we're always trying to show up, not only, in a work capacity, but also you'll see that come through in some of the things I anticipate that you'll ask me about the way we think about partnerships and sponsorships.
Absolutely. As you were discussing that, I was thinking, I'm hearing possible connection points, right,
Yes.
to sponsorships and how they could really be integrated to support all of those goals. So why don't we start there with first of all, you have a really robust sponsorship portfolio. You've got some long time as well as some relatively new relationships with the global and national Olympic movement, U.S. Open tennis, the USGA, U.S. soccer, WNBA, NWSL. There's more than that. So what is kind of the overall the business case for those sponsorships, Suzanne? In other words, what are the goals and objectives that they achieve for Deloitte?
So we think about it through three lenses, right? The first is obviously the brand. Are we proud of where the brand would show up, and does that get us, eyes that we wouldn't necessarily get in, sort of in everyday work? The second is, does it afford us a rich storytelling platform for our clients and, through the hospitality angle as well? And then last but not least, which is slightly different than, as I talk to other CMOs, but we really take a hard look through the talent lens as well. Will our people be proud of the work that we're doing and the sponsorship that we have?
So you've got the internal audience as well as the external.
Yes.
Across that portfolio, and we'll talk about some of the specific partnerships that you have, but I'm wondering in general, are there different audiences and targets for each of those properties, or is there kind of a general external stakeholder or prospect that you're trying to reach?
Both, I would say, are true, right? So for sure, we have, different audiences that we're trying to reach through the different properties. And, we have partnerships and sponsorships outside of the sports arena as well for that. And that's really important to us. Again, the breadth of the work that we do demands that. But I would say that a lot of what we're trying to do when we evaluate partnerships and sponsorships is think about things that we can do that are distinctly Deloitte that others couldn't do through a partnership and sponsorship lens. And that requires us to really think deeply about what is the mission of the organization that we're entering the partnership or the sponsorship agreement with, and then think about the things that we uniquely could do together that others couldn't do. So that's a big part of the mindset we bring to the table.
That I think is really interesting because clearly as a professional services company, you are in a position to do things that a consumer packaged goods company isn't, and a lot of that then translates into I'm guessing providing those kinds of services and assistance. In many cases that can be a more valuable contribution than writing a check, paying a sponsorship fee. Is that an element when you negotiate a partnership with any of your partners?
That is a significant element for us. We believe deeply that, sort of the world will be propelled forward by people coming together to solve the world's, most complex problems. And that definitely shows up in the way we think about the relationship we want with our, partnerships and sponsorships. And so we do love to help those organizations achieve their mission by bringing forward, again, things that we can do that other companies can't do. And, again, I talked about the brand being proud of the work, the client showcase, and then ultimately talent. All of those things come true when we are able to negotiate deals like that, right? Because our people then do that work. It showcases the impact that we can make. And again, that's something we uniquely can do versus other. You mentioned consumer products company. They may want to do a product launch at something that's not something we would do. So again, that portfolio relationships is important, but that's the way we look at it.
I want to come back and talk a little bit more about how you use those, the highlights, how you highlight what you can do. But why don't we start with it? Do you have kind of an example that you're particularly proud of how Deloitte has worked with a partner to help it achieve some particular goals and objectives?
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate, as you mentioned in my title. My role is both at the U.S. level and the global level, so I have some amazing stories to tell. If you think about what unfolded this summer, was the IOC and Paris pulled off an amazing Olympic experience.
Indeed.
We were privileged to be part of that, and we have incredible stories about the work that we're doing for the IOC as we think about them executing the games over the next. We have what we call a partnership with purpose commitment that we've made for 10 years. The longevity of that commitment is very important to us. But the storytelling, when you think about, when they went out and looked for the partner that they wanted to work with to deliver on some of their most critical business issues, the ability to talk about the fact that, with half the world watching, they chose Deloitte to be the partner to deliver those things that were required to deliver the games in the future. That's a very powerful, client storytelling platform for us that we're very, very proud of. But it also allowed us to talk about Team Deloitte and our, support of athletes and our support of our talent to pursue multifaceted, goals. So it allows us a very rich, dynamic platform as well. On the flip side, we've done some very interesting work with the WNBA and the US Open around a lot of the fan experience and the digital platform that they're operating on to get more fan data to be able to respond to the fans and the experience that they want and need. So those are all really fun stories that sort of give you a hint. And I always, joke that if I come up to you on the sidelines of a soccer field and sort of say like, hey, do you want to hear about, Deloitte Cyber Operate? You might, quickly find an excuse to go to a different part of the field. But if I talk about it through, some of these major platforms that are very relatable, then it becomes, a very fun way of telling what Deloitte can do.
Leads me right into that next question, because you're the chief marketing officer. You have a lot of levers you can pull and all of the different things in the marketing quiver there, if you will, to choose from to try and achieve your goals. But as you say, I mean, the ability to have that real life examples and success stories and case studies, I would imagine are very important in terms of being able to then share what you've done and what your capabilities are with prospects or with existing customers. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. What we're always trying to do is really showcase, if you go back to the brand promise I talked about, not only what we can do, right, which is critical to us, and you can see that through the lens of the work that we're doing with these organizations, but also how our personality, how it feels to show up with Deloitte as well. So we really try to pull through that with, again, our commitment to the organizations are enduring, and we're trying to help them achieve their mission. That is part of our promise to all of our clients and to our people. And on the flip side, sort of the way that we host and that sort of thing, hopefully, again, allows us to showcase what it feels like to work with Deloitte, which we think is very special as well.
I do want to come back and talk about, again, some of the other specific things that you're doing right now. But as we're talking about this, working to work with clients and prospects and using this as a showcase, kind of leads naturally into, so how do you specifically determine how these sponsorships are performing? Are you looking at return on objectives, return on investment? And I've always been fascinated by the B2B space because there are so many components that go into making a sale, if you will. And how is it possible, I guess I should ask, to isolate the impact that a partnership would have on that?
Well, as you might imagine, it's never easy, right? But we do have a very robust business case process, if you will. And we do think about it, sort of through the lens of a 360-degree relationship. So again, there is brand and there would be, lots of traditional marketing metrics in there, around reach and audience and all of those sorts of things, that you negotiate as part of the deal. Through clients, that's really sort of two pieces. Again, we talked about the storytelling platform. That's very important to us. And then there's the piece about the hospitality as well. So is a place where we can really showcase the work that we're doing. And then last but not least, in the talent space, we are looking about, does it make our people proud? And we look through that lens at some things that are slightly, I wouldn't call them unusual, but maybe things that people don't think about. So we think a lot about, are people posting and engaging in their own, world to show that they're proud of the work that we're doing and they like those associations and that affinity. And so we do track that kind of thing through the talent lens as well.
Most recently, you've done some really amazing things in the women's sports space, which has obviously been a topic of conversation on this podcast and just in general. This past year, you mentioned the WNBA. You're one of the WNBA change makers, and recently launched the Athena Pledge alongside AT&T, Capital One, and Cisco. I'd love it if you could tell us more about that particular initiative and also just the importance of women's sports to Deloitte overall.
Well, I feel very fortunate because Deloitte has had a long-standing commitment and real belief in the power of diversity and inclusion, and specifically for women. We did some work last year for the finals of the WNBA that I'm very proud of, that really sort of was about, cheering professional women on and off the court, and sort of the notion of girls that play become women who lead, and that direct connection between sports and sort of, the lessons we learn by that. So those things have always been very important to Deloitte. And as you mentioned, we recently signed the Athena Pledge, which we're very proud of. And that is really all about, kind of capitalizing on a moment and making sure that we, as bigger brands, we're doing that with AT&T, Cisco, and Capital One. And it really is about helping all of us and many other big brands really step into this moment about supporting women's sports, because again, it's a rich storytelling. It provides, capital and support for those athletes, coaches, ecosystems that we believe is critically important. One of the things when we were doing a lot of the work to figure out, kind of size the problem and of the people, of the buyers, right, the potential buyers, 78% said that they believe that it increased industry data and insights would help overcome some of the internal hesitation about putting more money in particularly women's sports. So that's really what we're trying to step into and encouraging others to step into too. Because again, we believe there's goodness for that in the notion of kind of girls who play become women who lead. We absolutely believe that that's very critical to women's sports in general and that ecosystem, and that it's, really sort of a societal good that we believe advantages everybody, because the more people that we can be inclusive about participation, the better off we're all going to be. We'll start with women's through the Athena Pledge, but that's kind of an enduring value that's important for all of us to be able to prove how we do that collectively.
It's so important. I work with a number of women's sports properties, and I think they have collectively. I can summarize their feeling is it's been great that we've kind of moved from of treating women's sports sponsorships and partnerships as something that's good to do and maybe feel good and all of that to that's all great and it's the right thing to do and all of that kind of stuff, but they want to be treated as equally in terms of we can move the needle for our partners, and we can there's a business case to be made for partnerships, and but if there's been something that's lacking, it's the data to prove all of that.
Right.
And it's nice to see not only the Athena Pledge initiative, but other things where we're starting to really collect that information that, as you say, can be used by the buyers on the brand side to really support why this is not just, again, a good thing to do or that the flavor of the month, but really is something that's sustainable and we should be seeing for a long time to come.
Absolutely.
I'd love to get just a little bit into nuts and bolts because the folks that listen to this podcast are all marketing professionals and in sports and entertainment. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about the structure that supports sponsorships at Deloitte. Can you tell us a little bit about the team that works on partnerships, whether there are any third parties that you use to help execute or activate the partnerships?
Yes. So we do have a very deliberate structure, if you will. I mentioned that at the global level, we do have structure for our global partnerships and sponsorships. And then we have a similar structure at the US. They obviously work very closely together. And as you might imagine, given that we're trying to deliver on the brand, clients, and talent, that's the lens through which we think about providing the support. So certainly the brand would be all of the traditional kind of marketing assets, whether those are digital campaigns or actual commercials, that sort of piece. How does the brand show up in those spaces? We do have a lot of support through the window of client hospitality, but also additional activation so that even if you're not physically at an event, you can tell the story that we're trying to tell at that event, more broadly. And then again, through the talent lens, we have both the hospitality angle that we work very closely with that part of the organization. So my team works very closely with sort of, talent through that lens. We work very closely with Kwesi Mitchell's team, who's our chief purpose officer, through the purpose lens to make sure that is front and center. We work with the client part of the organization on, who actually attends the events and that sort of thing. And we're the orchestrators of the business case and the strategy behind it. To your particular point, I have a very great team. So I'm in that sort of privileged spot where I don't need to work with a third party, but we absolutely love to work with third parties in particularly environments where that makes a lot of sense. Sure. If you think about the WNBA spot that I mentioned a year ago, we did that with Maximum Effort. And we couldn't have done it without them. They were absolutely geniuses behind the scenes with the way that spot unfolded, the actual concept and the way it was delivered. So we love to do, kind of co-creation on that. But we're also very capable and able to execute on our own as well.
Oh, that's great. And it's great to hear, how it works across the organization, right? Because sponsorships shouldn't be siloed within one particular department. They need to be connected to the people in purpose and in all of the different areas that can touch it. So that's really
wonderful. And the one I would add that I didn't mention, which is probably our most important one, which I think is true for us because of the multifaceted relationship we have with these organizations, but also I would argue all CMOs should, pay attention to it, is with the business, right? So right. We make sure that the business is very front and center. They're the ones that we need the commitment to actually make the deal. They're the ones that are committing to do the work to make these organizations' missions, happen. So that's a really critical piece. And then, of course, they pull through, the clients, and they own the people and all that sort of thing. So these are not, we don't consider these to be sort of, marketing only relationships.
Right.
These are, require a robust sort of governance process, if you will, that allows us to really take advantage of them. And
Yeah.
that shows up in the way, I think, if you talk to our partners, they would say that they feel that commitment deeply.
Well, and that's important too. Going back to the way you work with partners, right? You and I've been in this case too. You don't want a partner to feel that they are different than any other client, right? They are just as important to you, to the organization, as the other folks that are coming to you, and that you're working with to solve their issues. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Suzanne, this has really been insightful, and hearing more about all of the stuff that you're doing, I think really will be educational for all of our listeners. Before I let you go, just want to ask: is there anything coming up? We're heading into 2025 here, and in just a little bit. Anything we should be looking forward to, or that you're looking forward to in terms of partnerships?
Yes, so many things actually. I'm very excited about Athena Pledge and seeing what momentum we can push on that. We're heading into in the spring will be our big season. You'll see us launch some fun. We are doing a brand platform refresh, so you'll see some. I'm very excited about the spots that you'll see through some of our partnerships and sponsorships this spring, notably US Open, both golf and tennis. We have the Winter Olympics coming up. That's always a fun place for us to showcase the work that we're doing to support the IOC. So lots of good stuff. She
Excellent.
believes through the soccer lens. That's just, it's like sort of saying which one is your favorite child.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so many great things happening, and we'll be sure to keep an eye on all of that, and maybe we'll touch base again sometime and see how all of that's going for you, and certainly as we lead into LA 28, I know that'll obviously be an exciting time for all of you as
Yes,
well.
I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And on behalf of Ticket Manager, I want to thank all of you for watching and listening, and to remind you to please join us again for the next episode in the All Access interview series.